We have as our panelists Shelia Dunn from the National Motors Association, Lydia Grant from the Sunland-Tujunga Neighborhood Council, and John Russo from Keep the U.S. Moving. These are all experienced activists and advocates for the positions that you've heard today, and they're going to give you some very actionable takeaways today, things that you can actually do to make a difference. So without further ado, Shelia.
Thank you so much for inviting the National Motors Association, and we're very proud to be sponsors of this conference. I'm Shelia Dunn. I'm the Communications Director. We are a national association of members. We're grassroots, nonpartisan, which means we don't receive any outside money. We do everything the hard way, as I say. But that's really important because we are independent and we work very hard at what we do every single day. We started back in the day when most of you probably remember this, when the 55 miles per hour speed limit was imposed on the nation. Our association was very instrumental. That's the spark. That was the spark, and that's how we started. And we're very instrumental in getting that eliminated or overturned. Today, we continue to fight for speed limits. We also fight for sane traffic laws. And we also, one of the things that we certainly agree on with John Forrester is that every road user should be using the same rules of the road. This is extremely important. This is the safest way. The other thing that we also work on is we also believe that traffic flow is the safest way to have a road go, is having continuous traffic flow. So that's really important to remember. Currently, we're working on two national issues, and this is kind of all interrelated. Motorist rights, we call ourselves a Motorist Rights Association, and motorist rights are interrelated with road traffic, but there's so many other things that are going on with regards to motorist rights. There's two national issues we've been working on for the last 2 years. One is to reform on the federal level civil asset forfeiture. You may not know what that is, but it was a law created a number of years ago to fight drug lords, take their money and property away. And somehow that morphed into taking other people's money and property away during traffic stops. And what happens is police they'll search you for whatever reason. They're trying to arrest you, they search you, and you may have $500 on you. And they decide, well, we're going to take that because we think you got that illegally. So they take it. They don't necessarily arrest you, but you don't get your money back right away. You have to go to civil court to get it. So there's a lot of problems with civil asset forfeiture. States are always working on this issue. 3 states this year passed some reform. Hawaii, which had both the House and the Senate, voted unanimously for their reform. Their governor vetoed it. So that's what we're always faced with. There is an act right now in Congress called the FAIR Act, and we're hoping that passes in the next year or so, but it's very slow. The other issue that we're working on is also another, what we call a policing for profit issue. And it has to do with the federal government funds actually traffic enforcement programs. It's basically money they send to states, and then the states give it to local departments if they apply for it. For example, last year, Henderson, Nevada did 19 different traffic enforcement campaigns based on national things like click it or ticket, or drive sober or get pulled over, those sorts of campaigns. You probably have heard of them. But what's happening is that the federal government requires the police departments to actually say how many tickets, or they actually tell the departments how many tickets they're supposed to do per hour. And that is a traffic ticket quota. This is illegal in many states, and this is wrong. And so that's the other thing that we're working on and is slowly going through Congress as well. Another issue that we're going to be working on, that we're starting to work on this summer, both the House and Senate, U.S. House and Senate, both brought forth pretty much on the same day a Complete Streets national bill. I don't know if you're aware of this. But this is something that's really, really important that we have to galvanize motorists to fight against or to advocate against, because if it goes national, it's really a big problem. See, I don't think a lot of people realize that Complete Streets was its own thing for a long time, but a couple of years ago they became a partner of Vision Zero. So now they're working hand in hand to do all of these things that they're doing, especially with road diets and other things that are going on. Okay. So we're still working on speed limits. If you can believe, speed limits are a continuous problem all across the nation, and we're always fighting against some of the things that are happening. One of the biggest things that's happening with speed limits is the 85th percentile is getting under attack. Does anyone know what that is? 85th percentile? It's a traffic engineering term. Basically, traffic engineers use, let's say they look at a road and they see 100 drivers and 85% of them are driving like 35 miles per hour. So they'll say, well, that looks like that should be 35 miles per hour. So they don't look at the outliers, but they look at 85%. That's been used for a very long time. In California, each street has to be re-engineered every 10 years, and if not, cops can't give you a speeding ticket. You can actually say, well, they didn't engineer that, so don't have to pay it. So that's really important in California. But this is the problem in California. There was a bill trying to get rid of this year, this 85th percentile. And instead, the bill didn't pass, but instead they decided to put together a Vision Zero task force. And this task force is going to be bringing a study out in January, we believe. And I'm pretty sure they're going to say, hey, we need to get rid of this 85th percentile. We want local officials who have no traffic engineering degrees or expertise to decide the speed limits. This is happening across the nation. Massachusetts, a couple of years ago, decided to do this. Boston was really excited about it. They immediately, as soon as the law passed, they put their speed limits down to 25. A study came out and saying that, okay, well, people are still driving the same speed they always drove. Because, see, that's the thing about driving. People generally drive the speed limit they feel comfortable with. And you know this yourself. When you're driving on a highway where you actually have, it's fairly going, you're going to drive 75, 80, probably not faster than that. I mean, unless you're, a speed demon. But because most people don't feel comfortable driving unless it's too much. Unless your car is like a little car or something, you don't feel comfortable driving that fast. So that's what we're talking about, and that's why in Boston it's not really working. So now, guess what the city officials want to do? They want to take the speed limit down to 20. So we're continuously fighting these sorts of things all over the country, and it's really frustrating because it's like, and remember this. Lowering the speed limit is traffic calming, so that's what we have to remember, because there's a misnomer in our country that speed kills. You always hear this, speed kills, speed kills. And yeah, in some accidents that might be the case. But if you actually look at the statistics from the federal government, we are actually driving more miles than ever before, and we're actually safer than ever before. And that's what people are not talking about. You do see that in studies every once in a while, but the anti-car folks are certainly saying, hey, we're killing everybody and things like that. The other thing that we work on a lot on is automated traffic enforcement. Does anybody know what that is? Have some in California? Yeah, it's red light cameras in California. There's speed cameras. There's the thing called green light cameras, which is the combination of speed and red light cameras in the same thing. We also put in that category things like automated license plate readers, which is becoming a huge issue everywhere. Surveillance cameras, facial recognition cameras. So there's a lot of things going on in this area, and pretty much, Big Brother's watching, so just remember that. But we fight this all the time, and we had a great success this year in the Texas legislature, which only meets every 2 years. So we were very excited they got rid of their red light cameras, and we're hoping California someday will, because a red light camera in California costs almost $500. And if you're working minimum wage, you have to decide, well, am I going to do that or am I going to feed my family? It's a tough situation. Speed cameras encourage artificially low speed limits and revenue-driven enforcement. This is also policing for profit. The other thing in California that's happening with traffic tickets in general is that, I don't know what the position is, but the chief court judge of California had a committee, and they recommended a couple of years ago that all traffic tickets should become in civil court instead of traffic court. And when this happens, that means you lose your Fourth Amendment rights to actually contest your ticket. This is a very serious issue. In many states, this is already happening with ATE tickets, automated traffic tickets, where they're in civil court, and what was happening in Texas, people just stopped paying them because it didn't go against points or anything, and it wasn't really in a real ticket. It was really, truly a way to make money for the city. I'll give you an example. New Orleans, which is Kathleen's city, a number of years ago, there was the mayor before this one said literally in the paper he was going to put in 50 more cameras because he needed to balance his budget. Now, the new mayor ran on she got into office saying she's going to get rid of all the cameras, and guess what? They're not gone. So cities do see this as a way to make money, and they actually budget how much money they're going to make, and it's really frightening. There's all kinds of schemes and stuff like this all over the country. Oh yeah, I'm going to make a shout out to New York City. New York City recently passed, or New York State, it's a very complicated problem with New York City and New York State. I can't really go into all that. But the legislature decided that New York City needed more school zone cameras, speed cameras. And basically they're going to put in 2,000 school zone speed cameras, which is basically a speed camera almost every corner. And basically New York City is a giant speed trap all of a sudden. So coupled with that, now they're also been discussing congestion pricing, so that's going to go in below 60th Street. They have road diets everywhere. They just lost a court case this past week, so the 14th Street now is just a bus-only lane, whereas 12th and 13th Street also have bike lanes, so I don't even know how people are going to get across town. I'm looking at the Millers over here from New York City, but they can tell you a lot more. Not only that, trucks, freight trucks that have to go into New York have to pay incredible fees every year. I don't even know how truckers even make a living there. I think what's going to happen is eventually people just won't drive there from Jersey to service people in Manhattan or deliver freight. And a recent citystate.com org, I don't know what they're called exactly, they recently came out with a report saying in the next 25 years, New York City is going to have a 68% increase in freight delivery. That's insane, What are they going to do? I don't know. So it's all interconnected, the road diets and everything and all that. So anyway, New York City is a giant speed trap. Don't go there anytime soon. Yeah, that's right. Okay, there's two things I want you to get out of my presentation if you haven't got anything out yet. This is it. All traffic is local. Remember that. All traffic is local. And why this is important is because, this is why. Oh, sorry. It didn't.
Why did you pick that was Ocean Park Boulevard at Main Street?
Because I used that in our magazine recently, and I think it's actually quite a beautiful photo, but it is a road diet, so that's why I used it, yes. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful photo, though, so that's why I picked it.
Traffic doesn't look that good.
No, of course not, but it looks good in there. You can see the bus, you can see that it's a road diet, there's some bike lanes. All traffic's local because, most motorists don't really care about anything with motorist rights unless it affects them locally. So that's why I say it. I don't know if motorists are apathetic. Maybe they are. But I was thinking, I don't know if you guys watched Stephen Colbert, but I was watching him last week, and Rami Malek, the actor, was on there. And I'm sorry to have to say something about an actor, but he had something very interesting to say about the show Mr. Robot. I don't know if any of you watched that, but it's I don't know if you know Mr. Robot. It's about where a hacker hacks into the money system and destroys America somehow. And so what he was saying is that he was really thought that what the guys caught in the show is that everyone's really just exhausted. And I thought that was really interesting because I really think in a way motorists are just exhausted. Just trying to get from A to B. It's just so exhausting sometimes. But the one thing that he did say after that, he said, but I'm really though think that we can get over this exhaustion and we can move on. And I thought that was a really good statement. And because Mr. Robot, I think, is one of those shows that, you can't get out of your mind. It's just so crazy what happens. So anyway, I'm sorry I have to quote an actor, but I thought that was quite interesting. So what does engagement look like? Now, this is the thing about motorists. The National Motorist Association, like I said before, we're grassroots, nonpartisan. We actually have people, and a lot of people accuse us of being libertarian and conservative, but we're actually not. We're actually kind of even. We have libertarians, we have conservatives, we have Democrats, we have unaffiliated. And we have those voices coming in all the time, and it's really quite fascinating to see how all the motorist voices are. Because, motorists, all of us are motorists. But the other thing is that all of us are also pedestrians. We're also bike riders. We're also transit riders. We're also horseback riders, scooter riders, whatever. We're all hybrids. So that's what we also have to keep in mind. We're all different kinds of shapes and sizes and genders and, whatever. And so whenever you're becoming, whenever you're trying to activate motorists, you have to remember this. This is really, really key. So how does a motorist become activated? It's pretty straightforward, I think. So let's just kind of go through the process. Yeah, so let's say you're one day you're driving to work and it takes you 20 minutes, which is your typical ride, and then the next day it's 40 minutes, and all of a sudden you realize, what happened? And you had no idea this was going to happen. I mean, I know road diets don't happen that quickly, but you had no idea this was going to happen. So you start thinking about it, and you start Googling stuff, and you start thinking, well, what is this road diet? And you start learning about the vocabulary, road diet, traffic calming, all the different kinds of traffic calming. You might discover the National Motorist Association. You might discover Keep the U.S. Moving. You kind of connect with them. You network with them. Then you start realizing, I can maybe do something about this. You organize. You get your friends and family involved. You talk to strangers. You talk to the media. You decide on a plan of action. You might start a petition drive to do a ballot initiative, let's say, to get rid of your red light cameras. That's happening across the nation as we speak. You try to do a court case. That also happens quite a bit across the country. In New York City, it happens all the time, and it's not very successful, but it does happen, right? You have some sort of protest like they did in Long Beach, and I'm not sure all the particulars, Robert, but it seemed like it was pretty effective what happened, and you were able to shut down the road diet there. So in Pasadena, they had 400 people show up, I think twice, at 2 different council meetings. They were able to shoot the road diet down there. So, stuff can happen if people organize and do things, and that's really, really key. Now, the other problem with this coin is that once that action happens, once a resolution of something has happened, whether you're in your favor or someone else's, you have to ask yourself, what's next? And that's where we're at. I think we're at the what next stage. What is next in this fight for motorist rights, particularly with road diets? At the NMA, we kind of look, I'm just going to give you some vocabulary here, but we kind of look at 3 different kinds of advocates, or engagers, I guess, because one of them is an advocate. We hope that all of our members are at least advocates, and what we consider an advocate is someone who will write letters, who will, to their elected officials, write letters to the editor, write online comments to articles they like or don't like. This is really, really important, and it's important to get those advocates to actually become activists. These are also people that will go to that city council meeting and help you storm that city council meeting and make a difference. But they may not want to do any more than that. So those are the people that are the hardest to convert to long-term advocates. Activists are people that are action-oriented. Many of us here today are activists. We are action-oriented. We want to try to make things change. We've done a lot of different things to do that. It's very difficult, and sometimes you feel like you're the only person out there. But there are people here to help you, and that's what you need to understand. You can contact the NMA. You can contact John Russo at Keep the U.S. Moving. So there are people that you can contact, and that's really, really key. And then we go to the next level, and these could also be the advocates and activists level. And these are people that will become citizen lobbyists. And that's a little bit different category. These are people that delve into an issue. They write an issue paper. They try to educate their elected officials who may or may not want to be educated, but you try to do it anyway, because elected officials are there to represent you and your concerns and your neighbors' concerns. So it's important that you try to use that in that way. Not everyone's scared to do that, and that's okay, but it does happen, and you can do it with a little forethought and some planning. They also do official committee work. They try to get themselves appointed to commissions, public transportation commissions, all kinds of commissions, and that's really key. And sometimes they even run for office, like Matthew Schneider, like Robert Fox. They're running for office because they had it, and they don't want to take it anymore. So everyone has the right to run for office, so it's something to think about in the future. Jay Bieber also ran for office. It was, it's a really difficult thing to do in Los Angeles, but he did it, and it's a really great thing. So in a lot of ways, you have the first-time advocates, that also are asking what next. They may decide to do something else, but you may be able to engage them to do more, and that's what's really important. You have long-term, and then you have sustained. I'm going to now tell you a couple of stories about some advocates. We have 2 Pennsylvania advocates that have been working for years, and mainly what they do is write letters to the editor. And for a long time, they weren't getting any traction, just none. They would complain, nobody's taking our letters, why is that? But they kept plugging it, and they kept doing it, and finally, I don't know, I think in the last 6 months, they've gotten 2 letters a week in papers in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, I don't know if anybody's from there, and I don't mean to disparage the state, but they have a lot of problems there, like corruption and all kinds of stuff, especially in the transportation area. But one weird thing about Pennsylvania is that they are the last state that does not have local state radar. Can you believe that? There's one state that doesn't have local state radar. And Pennsylvania is it. And so these guys have been working very hard to make sure the legislature does not pass this bill. And see, when local police have radar, they can have speed traps, they can, get you very easily. And basically, speed trap is when they sit there and the speed limit goes down from, let's say, 50 to 40 really fast, and they'll get you. And so that's why, state police actually have radar, so, it's not totally devoid of radar. So they've been writing these letters to the editors, to their elected officials, and radar for the last 2 or 3 years has still not passed. So they have been effective, and it's something to think about. You need, if you're an activist, you need those people that will write the letters. Don't ever disparage letter writing, because it does work, but it does take some time. And these guys have built up gravitas too, and that's the other thing that you have to remember. You have to build up the credibility in order for people to do that. So I think that's what's happened. Another person I'd like to point out who was a long-term sustained member, he was an advocate, an activist, and a citizen lobbyist, is James C. Walker. I know that that name may not mean a lot to you, but at the National Motorists Association, he was a tireless advocate, and he was a super friend. He passed away in August, and he was involved in some of the early conversations with Keep the U.S. Moving last spring. And we really miss him. But what was amazing about Jim is that he worked with us to try to work on 2 things that we now do. We do a Monday blog called the ATE Racket Report, and he was instrumental in getting that involved. And it's a headline that we do about all the things that are going on across the country with red light cameras and speed cameras and things like that. So. We also started together the Warren Cars Watch blog, which comes out on Wednesdays, and that's also a headline thing, and that's really morphed into, it's really amazing to me how much, from when we started it about a year ago to what's happening now. It's like just an explosion of activity, so it's really important that you can use that as a resource. It's on every Wednesday. The other thing that Jim did that I thought was remarkable as an advocate, especially with ATE, whenever he read about a town, usually in Florida it seems, that once wanted to start a red light camera program or stop one, he would actually go and find the emails of the elected officials of the town and write them. And he would send us copies of it. He would also write letters to the editor of that paper. And so he was tireless at doing that. He also got into a lot of fights with anti-car folks in online comments, which I would highly recommend not doing because it's not worth it. We wanted to tell him not to do it because, it's not cool. But anyway, the other thing that Jim did that was really remarkable, and this is, not everybody's going to have this kind of commitment, but he certainly did. He lived in the state of Michigan, and for 12 years he worked on changing how speed limits were enforced in Michigan, and also how engineers, he tried to standardize how they all worked. So he worked with both the state police and lawmakers to get that passed. So he's sorely missed already, but not everybody's going to have that commitment, so that's what you have to remember. But I just wanted to point that out because he's somebody that we miss, and this is kind of my personal tribute to him. How much time do I have?
You're way over.
I'm way over? Oh,
But you were doing so well, we figured.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Well, okay.
And we're actually a little bit ahead of time.
Okay. Oh, darn. Okay. Well, the last thing I want to say is that one of the things that we're going to start in January, it's a Motorist Votes educational campaign. And this is something we've never done before. This is a new thing for us. Since we're nonpartisan, we will not be, we will not, what's the term? Endorse, thank you. Endorse candidates or endorse ballot issues, but we will let you know what they are. And the biggest thing, I think Tom was talking about, it's important that people vote. And think about voting as a motorist. I don't know if you realize this, but at least 80% of adult Americans have a driver's license. So that means that at one point, and that's probably conservative, the figure's kind of iffy what it is, but it's like 200 million people or something. So if all of us voted and we voted as a motorist, just think what would happen. So that's not going to happen, of course, but it's something crazy to think about. So that's really key. And I would encourage everyone, I know it's tough out there, and I know it's tough to get started on these campaigns, but I would highly encourage you to do it. And you do have resources, so don't feel like you're the only person out there and you're all alone, because you're not. So thank you so much for having us.
So hi, I'm Lydia Grant, and for those of you who know I shattered my shoulder, I'm not going to go climbing up there because chances are I'll be splayed out all over the floor. And I actually am looking forward to speaking on this panel. I'm one of those activists, at least I call myself an advocate, who started out helping people with issues they were having. I have now run the gamut of just about every type of issue under the sun you can imagine. If you're from the LA area, I have helped parents to navigate LAUSD for the last 30 years. I have got involved in my road diet issue. I live in the community of Sunland-Tujunga. I am on my neighborhood council, even though today I'm not here representing them. But I was also a former city commissioner. I helped to oversee the neighborhood councils across the city of Los Angeles. There are 96 of them. And Mayor Garcetti had appointed me as a commissioner, sometimes I'm sure with his deepest regret. But I'm not afraid to stand up, and I'm not afraid to fight back. And I got involved in my road diet issue when it was actually before the Paradise road diet issue happened with the fires. Chris was doing an interview with me for the Wall Street Journal, and they had road dieted my community. And unfortunately, we had a fire. This was not the first fire we'd had. And they decided to road diet our evacuation route. Well, I live here in the city of Los Angeles. I live in Sunland-Tujunga, and they decided to road diet Foothill Boulevard. It caused hours and hours of delays to people trying to get in and out, trying to get their kids. They evacuated our schools. Parents were sent out to North Hollywood, unable to get back to their homes to get their pets. It caused a huge issue, and some of the pictures that you saw earlier were from that evacuation. 2 months later, we had the station fire first. They road dieted. We had the Creek fire, and then last we had the La Tuna fire. Well, in all the wisdom of the city of Los Angeles, they have also since road dieted La Tuna Canyon as our other evacuation route. So the first thing that happens in a hillside area is they shut down the freeways so they can use the freeways as the way to get the emergency vehicles in and out. And that only leaves our two streets that we have to evacuate. And when they shut those down to one lane in each direction, then you're really limited as to how you can get out. I fear that my community is going to be the next Paradise, that we're going to be talking about it with 88 people killed sitting in their cars. I don't know about you guys, but when the Paradise fire first happened, I know I contacted Chris, and at the time we started working on that story, there were several thousand people missing, and then suddenly just 88 had been found dead. So we're still not sure what happened to those other few thousand people that nobody's talking about, but at this point, there's not much we can do about it, but to continue to push on to make sure this doesn't happen again. Unfortunately, this is being set up across communities, all across not only the city, but the state of California, up in the areas of Santa Rosa, Butte County, again, the Paradise area. They've had fires since then. People have been lighting them. It's amazing to me that this situation, that our legislators and our officials are not waking up to the fact that they are endangering our lives. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
They don't care.
You're right, they don't.
They don't care
So
whether their constituents die or not.
the only way they're going to care is if we make them care. And I've been involved in many, many activist issues across the city. And basically, the way you make them care is you hold them accountable. You go to them. You say, I'm telling you right now, this is where I live. This is what I'm expecting will happen. And if that does happen, we will hold you personally accountable. You have to make them feel threatened. One of the things that I say to people is they need to remember that we do not work for them. They work for us. And we need to make sure that we remind them of that all the time. I am not opposed. I know Jill Stewart's in the room. She's helped me with many of the issues I've had over the years, helping me get them out to the media. I am not afraid to get in my car and drive to Sacramento When there's an issue that they have and it's a committee, I think it needs to be addressed, I have no problem getting in my car, grabbing some friends, and driving up there. I also have no problem dealing with the city of Los Angeles. I do that often. I often am speaking on issues. There are so many people in this city who agree with us. The key is finding those people that agree and getting them to come out in numbers. Some of the reasons that people don't do that is fear. They're scared. They don't know how to put that speech together. They don't know how to get up and publicly speak. They don't know what is the best timing. One of the things I learned from one of my recent trips to Sacramento is that timing is everything. And the timing for this issue is now. The time for this issue is before anybody else gets killed, before anybody else doesn't get the emergency vehicles to respond in time and they pass away because they were stuck behind a road diet. We as the people in this room, we know what the issues are, we know what we're facing, but we can't allow that to stop us. We are our own base support unit of a movement that needs to move across this city. We need each and every one of you to go back, and we need you to reach out to 10 or 15 different people that you know. Tell them about the conference you came to today. Tell them about the things that were important to you, things that you didn't realize. One of the things I've talked to with Chris is I do a lot of coaching for neighborhood councils and how to speak in public, how to put your points together, how to do a presentation. I do it in a very simple manner. Anybody can follow it. Many times you'll find, especially with the city of Los Angeles, but I'm sure that it's this way across the country, when you go to speak and they're like, okay, you have 3 minutes, and then you get up to the mic, they're like, we just made it 1. And then you're like, how do I cover this? So the way that I put together my presentations is I do it in bullet points, I do it with supporting documents, and I will touch on, and this is what I tell people, you do the biggest one, and the biggest one, and those are the 2 you touch on. If they cut your time down, you go to the big one out the gate, you make a huge statement, and when you're done, you follow it with a huge statement, and you're finished. Because if nothing else, you have made an impression, and you have followed it up by something that scares the crap out of them. That's how you make an impression on such a short amount of time. I have the stuff written down. I just taught sessions at the Congress of Neighbor Councils. We had about 900 people last weekend at City Hall. I've told Chris I'm going to put together that packet and I'm going to give it to him so he can email it out to everybody. You may be far beyond that, and that's okay, but I'm sure that some of those other 8 or 10 people that you contact may need that information to help them get started. So we want to make sure that we're helping you. One of the other things that I had mentioned to Chris is we need to make sure that we're communicating with each other. When there's an article that goes out, we need to make sure we're hearing from you. We need to work with the different associations, the different nonprofits that are in the room, anybody that's here to help. We need to make sure we're sharing that information, because that is going to help motivate us, and it's going to help us see what could happen to us, and we can make that difference. Don't ever let them tell you no. You do not work for them. They cannot say no. No, they work for you, and if it takes us 20 or 30 or 50 or 1,000 people to tell them no, then we will bring that to the table until they hear us loud and clear. That is how you get things done. You do not take no for an answer. And what we have here is a base of support for everybody. None of you are alone. It doesn't matter if you're Matthew in Waverly. Matthew knows because he posts everything on Facebook, and I'm out there sharing it like I'm his best friend. And I don't mind putting advice out there or saying, hey, you're doing a great job, because that's what everybody needs. Everybody needs support. Everybody needs to know they're doing the right thing, and everybody needs to participate. And we need everybody we know to participate too, because that person is laying there dying of a heart attack, maybe one of our family members in the future. We have to own this. This is about us getting together and fixing it. I like to use the word army. Other people sound that's very militant sounding, so we're going to say we're all part of a big team, and we're going to work together to make a difference. I don't want to talk too much more, but I do want to cover a couple points that weren't covered by other panelists, things that people brought to my attention and said, hey, could you cover this? One of those is when we did our walk last night, I was speaking about the disability aspects. That's something that really wasn't covered in this. The fact is, when they take out road diets, the cities, counties, municipalities, whatever it is that you work under, they are terrible about maintaining the disabled parking spaces. They rip them out. They don't think they need to replace them. And so they are discriminating against the disabled. That's the first thing. And that is something we can all fight federally. We can fight that. They can't do that. They think they can, but they work for us, and we're going to stop them on that point alone. Second, when we did the walk up to the corner further up, they gerrymandered the way they did that intersection. It was terrible. The curb is taller than this space right here for you to get up. It used to be a handicap cutout, and they changed it. It's not okay. That needs to be changed. I guarantee you that City Council will be receiving a letter from me on Monday saying you're going to fix this or I'm going to take action. Okay. Second thing is, this was given to me. I wanted to mention it, that Title II of the Americans with Disability Act says roads are a facility, and facilities are not to be altered or constricted in such a way as to provide less access to the disabled. This gives us grounds for legal action in our areas. That's something just to remember. Again, building the team is going to be of highest priority. You can get information from us. We're happy to be your friend. Friend us on Facebook. Notice what we're posting. We're sharing articles. Share them out to others. We need to spread the word. We need people to know they're not alone in this. So I'm going to go ahead because I can be a total microphone hog, and I already saw the 5-minute little fingers go up. I'm not going to answer questions right now. Let's just finish with the other panelists, and then we can do questions. So I'm going to pass it off to John Russo.
Thank you, Mr. McMillan. This guy right here is my biggest fan. Every time I'm on the radio, I get a text from Mr. McMillan here, and he really inflates my ego. And please don't stop. So my name's John Russo. I'm the co-founder and director of Keep LA Moving, and then also co-founder director of Keep the US Moving. And if you told me 2 years ago I was going to be on this stage as an activist, which is a word that I've never used to describe myself, but I guess I am, I would have said you're crazy. I've never been involved in anything political in my life. I've never really been involved in anything in my life. I have kids. I go to work. I fly airplanes. I try to spend as much time with my family as I can. And now I spend a lot of time doing this nonsense. Because 2 years ago, I was driving to work, and I'm exactly what Sheila described. I was driving to work, and in Playa del Rey, on a street called Pershing Road, I saw LA Dot out, and they had rolled some trucks out, and they were working on the road. I'm like, this is great. They're going to fix the potholes. We're going to get a nice new road. And I came home, and I said, where'd the lane go? They took away a lane. And not only did they take away one lane, they took away 9 miles of lanes. And so this is a map of Playa del Rey. And then highlighted in red here are the road diets. And they road dieted Vista Del Mar, Culver Road, Pershing Drive, and Jefferson, which comes up here to Lincoln. And altogether, that's about 9 miles of road. And what I want you to look at and notice in this map is Playa del Rey's not a grid. When they took out those lanes, there's no other place to go to get around that road diet. We were basically trapped in there. And they told us that these projects are in response to speeding deaths and serious injuries on these streets, that motorists are cut through traffic. People that don't live in Playa del Rey, they are speeding through your town and they are killing people. And we need to slow them down and redirect them with a road diet. They said the community has an interest in making Playa del Rey a more livable beach community and less of a shortcut from the South Bay to points north. And what's really interesting when they say the community, because I said, well, I live in the community. They didn't talk to me. And then I asked Lisa, did they talk to you? And she said, no, they didn't talk to me. And we talked to our neighbors, and they said, no, they didn't talk to me. Playa del Rey is a community of about 12,000 people. They surveyed 100. They surveyed 100 people. And of those 100, 6 said they didn't feel safe riding a bike or crossing the street. 6 people. And because of those 6 people, we got 9 miles of road diets and bike lanes. They told us that this improvement will reduce speeding and cut through traffic. I talked about that. But this is really important, this last point here, because I know I'm supposed to be talking about how we fight back, but I'm going to go through a lot of data. Like most of my charts are data, because data is very important, because they're going to tell you a story, and that story is not true. They're going to tell you a story to what's the word I'm searching for here? They want to trigger your emotions. They want to elicit a response in you, an emotional response, not a rational response. And that's why data is very important. So they said our improvements have the potential to save a life every year and save an average of 16 people every year from suffering a serious injury. So to me, that says that we saw 1 person die every year and 16 people seriously injured every year on those roads. So that's very important, and I want you to remember that, because we're going to come back to that in a moment. So the LADOT and the people pushing road diets, they actually have a lot of activist journalist friends, and I use the term journalist in the most light way possible, because They're not journalists. These people create stories and they make up facts. And so Streets Blog LA said, the Playa del Rey projects are in response to speeding, deaths, and serious injuries on these streets. Mike Bonin, our wonderful councilman, he said, too many lives like Bridget's have been lost on the streets of Playa del Rey. People you might know, Mark Schachter, Michael Lockridge, Naomi Larson, and Jack Towdry, a beloved neighborhood cobbler. Dozens more have been seriously injured by speeding cars. And at the same time they're making these stories up, and it is true, these people did die. I'm not saying that these aren't true. This is over about 15 years that these deaths occurred. Not all of them occurred on the streets that were dieted, though. But they denigrated us for speaking out and saying, well, wait a second, I don't agree with this, and I don't think that we have a speeding problem, and you just turned my commute from 15 minutes into 45. But they started attacking us. They called us a vocal minority and a litigious and raucous driver backlash. And my personal favorite, which I use to this day, I don't know how many times I've been called this, but I'm a traffic safety denier. Because I don't believe that the road diets save lives. I don't believe that this road diet is making Venice Boulevard safer, and I'll get into that. So everywhere they go, in Waverly, Iowa, Matthew can tell you, they say this in Waverly. They said this to Frank there in Pasadena when he started Keep Pasadena Moving. In New York, they say this all the time. In every city across the town, big and small, they say, speeding drivers are killing people on bikes and walking, and we need a road diet to stop this. LA County Bike Coalition has claimed that so they were trying to push a road diet on 6th Street in Mid-City. And they said walking or biking on 6th Street between Fairfax and La Brea feels like walking next to a highway. Cars, encouraged by the design of the roadway, consistently speed, and crashes are a daily occurrence. A daily occurrence? That sounds pretty bad. I don't want to live on a street that has a crash every day. That's totally not true. And I should have put the stats in this chart. I don't know them off the top of my head, but I'll tell you that there was about 1 death in the last 10 years on 6th Street. Streets Blog LA, talking about Playa del Rey, said the Playa del Rey, well, I just read you that, so we won't go on that. And then they talked, so they were trying to, Atwater Village, they were trying to push a road diet there a year ago. And they said, Fletcher is also plagued with speeding car traffic. This traffic can be deadly. This was the case for 19-year-old Ryan Corris, who was killed by a hit-and-run driver in a crash on December 28, 2016. Now, this is tragic. A 19-year-old kid dying crossing the street is tragic, and I'm not trying to minimize his death. I really am not. But the part that they don't tell you about this is, number one, the car that hit him wasn't speeding. The second thing they don't tell you is that it occurred about 11:30 at night. The third thing they don't tell you is that he was intoxicated and he was crossing mid-block where there was no light, no street light. The car that hit him never saw him until it was too late. He didn't see him until he was in his headlights. He didn't have a chance to stop, but the guy crossing the street had a chance to see that car. A road diet would not have saved this man's life, but that's what they're implying with that statement. So LA Dot, they're pushing all these road diets in the name of safety, and I want to read you some quotes from the LA Dot Vision Zero Action Plan. This is from the 2017 Vision Zero Action Plan, and they said, and I'll show you on the next chart the actual quote. They say, Los Angeles experiences more traffic fatalities per capita than any peer city in the United States. More traffic fatalities per capita than anywhere else in the United States. And their bike blog says, a study conducted by the Federal Highway Administration a study conducted by the Highway Safety Information System for the Federal Highway Administration, there's a mouthful, found that road diets reduce crash frequency by 29% per mile from reconfiguration alone. Both these statements are completely false. They're not true. And I'll show you that in the next chart. So I'm going to credit my wife, Lisa, because she figured this out, because she's much smarter than me. I bought all this at face value. I'm like, oh gosh, Lisa, we have more traffic deaths than anywhere else in the United States? That's horrible. And she pointed out this little footnote down here. Well, actually, so this is the chart in the 2017 action plan. And here we have in Los Angeles, 6.27 deaths per capita. And then we have Chicago, Portland, San Diego. Down here at the bottom is New York, 3.21 traffic deaths per capita. And they have a source here. It's the U.S. Department of Transportation Traffic Safety Facts 2012. And what Lisa said to me, she said, why are they using 2012 data? This is 2017. That doesn't make any sense. So she went and she looked up this data for 2012. And lo and behold, LA's number one. LA was number 49. It was about half the national average. We had 6.27 traffic deaths per capita, as they said. But number one was Kansas City with 14.65. Totally false statement. But then she also found, hey, wait a second, they have 2015 data available. And in 2015, LA fell from 49 to 67. It was less than half the national average, 5.64 deaths per capita. Where the worst in the city in the country in the year was Detroit at 19.2. The national average is about 10. So LA is about half the national average, but yet they're out there saying LA has more traffic deaths per capita than anywhere else in the United States. Completely false. And that statement has showed up in the LA Times, in Streets Blog, on The LA Dot, obviously in their Vision Zero action plan, LA Walks, they were all out there pushing it that summer. And there was a great moment where Carla Mendelson, who unfortunately couldn't be here, but she founded Keep LA Moving with me and was very instrumental in the growth of this organization at the beginning. She was on the radio with a representative from LA Walks, and that woman said, LA has more traffic deaths per capita than any city in the country. How could you possibly be saying what you're saying? And Carla said, well, that's actually not true. It's number 49, and the woman lost her mind. And from that point on, she was completely discredited in everything she said, because they're lying to you. It is not true. We are number 49, and I want you to remember that.
That's our TV.
What's that?
That's our TV.
Oh, yeah, this is actually my TV from my living room. So the other stat is I told you the 29%, and they also say case studies often cited by the Federal Highway Administration, when you introduce a road diet, you'll lower accidents by 47%. Again, that sounds pretty good. We're gonna put a road diet down here, and we're gonna have 47% less accidents. Who wouldn't be in favor of that? It's completely false. So this number, if you read this report, and I'm an engineer. I'm an aerospace engineer by trade. I'm not a statistician, but they use a Bayesian statistical analysis, and they basically said what this analysis arrived at. They said the accidents have decreased by 47% than what would have happened had we not road dieted the road. So they're basically predicting the future. They're saying, had we not performed this road diet, there would have been 47% more accidents than we had. But if you look at the simple before-after analysis, there was actually a 6% drop in in traffic accidents. But there was also a corresponding drop in traffic volume. So if you account for traffic volume, there's really no change in the accidents. And the problem with this 47% statement is that you would say there would have to have been a huge increase in accidents on that road than the historical baseline. It's not supported by any of the data, and all the other streets that they looked at that were not road dieted, that they used as comparison sites, all those saw a reduction in traffic accidents in the post-road diet period, even though those roads were not road dieted. So the road diet had nothing to do with a drop in accidents. It certainly wasn't 47%, it was 6%. And then another point that you need to look at is traffic volume. Earlier today, Jim Moore was talking about traffic volume. Those streets had average traffic volume of 16,000 cars per day. We have 50,000 cars per day here on Venice Boulevard. We're talking apples and oranges. You can't compare a 16,000 car per day road to a 50,000 car per day road. And in this study, because you had a high volume road, accidents were actually up 21% post-road diet on that road. They did not drop. The streets that saw the precipitous drop in accidents of this average of 6% were roads that had about 7,000 cars per day. That's a road that actually has excess capacity. That's a road where you can take away a lane and you're not going to cause problems. That's where a road diet makes sense. And I'll kind of go on a tangent. I'm actually not anti-road diet. Keep LA Moving's not anti-road diet. We're anti-road diet on arterial boulevards where you have 50,000 cars per day. But 120th Street that connects Aviation to La Cienega, this is a residential road that was road dieted. It's a perfect example of a road diet. You had a road that didn't need 4 lanes. They took out 2 lanes, they put in bike lanes. You now connect all the houses on that street to Aviation La Cienega. It makes perfect sense. So what happened in Playa del Rey with our road diet? Well, we just had mass chaos. We had, this is Pershing Drive looking back to the airport. This is about a 2-mile backup that I passed on my way to work that day. We had people just making crazy U-turns because they wanted to get out of the traffic jam. We had a 400% increase in accidents over the previous 5-year average. We had accidents happening at night. We had them during the day. This was a pretty serious injury accident. It was chaos. So I'm going to start going rather quickly because Jay gave me the 5-minute sign.
It's your conference. You go as long as you want. I was giving you a sense of how long you are.
So all traffic accidents in the state of California are compiled by the California Highway Patrol. There's a state law that says all injury accidents in the state of California, all police departments have to forward that information to the state for integration, what they call the SWITRS database. SWITRS stands for Statewide Integrated Traffic Reporting System. And then TIMS is a tool put together by Berkeley that makes it very easy to see these things graphically. So what I'm showing you here is 10 years of traffic fatalities and serious injuries in Playa del Rey. In 10 years, we had 6 fatalities total, 2 motorists and 4 pedestrians. Speed wasn't cited as a factor in any fatal accident. Remember I told you speeding motorists are running people down in Playa del Rey? Remember that was Mike Bonan's quote? Not a single accident involving a pedestrian cited speed as a factor. And sadly, pedestrian violation was cited as the cause of all 4 pedestrian deaths. We had 21 total severe injuries over the 10-year period. That's 2.1 per year. Mike Bonan told us it was dozens per year. LADOT said we're going to save 16 per year. It was 2 per year for the previous 10 years. we had 16 motorists, 4 pedestrians, and 1 cyclist. 1 cyclist in 10 years. No cyclists were fatally injured. 1 cyclist received a severe injury. The idea that people were not safe biking in Playa del Rey was completely false. And that goes back to those emotional arguments. They don't care about the data. They don't care about the facts, because the facts are, if we tell you 1 cyclist was hit 7 years ago, so we're going to take away a traffic lane and make your commute 45 minutes, people are going to wait. No, we're not going to do that. But if we tell you people are being hurt every day, 16 a year, it's going to make more people come to your side. Now, I want to play this video because it has to do with Venice Boulevard. On December 20th, Mike Bonham released a video on Facebook proclaiming the great success of the Venice Boulevard road diet. And many people of you here from Mar Vista remember this day, and you're going to laugh when you see this. But I want you to see what he says, and then we're going to look at the data to see if we can back up his claims.
Mar Vista is moving forward. Great things are happening here. I'm Councilman Mike Bonham, and even though I've got a bad cold and I can barely talk, there's some great news I wanted to share with you. I just received a report from LADOT analyzing the Great Streets pilot project on Venice Boulevard, and it tells an amazing story. More people are using Venice Boulevard than ever before. More people are walking or riding bikes or scooters here. More kids and more families are using and enjoying this street. And because more people are using the street, business activity is up significantly. There was $3 million more of economic activity on the corridor than the year previous. And since we started the pilot program, 23 new businesses have opened on the street, and a couple others have expanded. And I'm hearing that a few more new businesses are on the way. That's all happening because people love Mar Vista, and they love a lively, walkable downtown. People keep telling us that Mar Vista is a neighborhood hangout, a destination, and a place for the whole family. They say that downtown Mar Vista now has a sense of place. Now, for sure, the Great Streets project has been controversial, but a lot of the chatter about it online is flat out wrong. The data shows that the street is safe and that people feel more comfortable here than before. It shows that traffic has returned to normal. And we know that people all around the West Side are talking about the great restaurants and galleries and fun events like the Mar Vista Art Walk. Based on the findings in this report, LADOT General Manager Shelia Dunn is recommending we continue the Great Streets program and the current street configuration. And I agree. It's created a wonderful sense of place for neighbors and visitors alike. And there's a lot more we can do to make it even better.
So one thing Mike Bonham said, he said, I have this great report from LADOT, and they tell me that the project is safe. And they say that the Venice Bowl, he said there's a lot of chatter online about this project. It's been controversial for sure, but a lot of it's not true. The project is safe. Well, if the street is safe now, post-road diet, it was certainly more safe before, because accidents have increased by 19% over the previous 12 months. Looking back 5 years, so now it's not, and so you say, okay, well, that's just 1 year. What if we go back 5 years? If you look back the average 5 years, accidents are 24% higher. And not only have accidents gone up, but injury accidents have gone up by 25%. So 25% more injury accidents have occurred on Venice Boulevard post-road diet than in the 12 months previous to the road diet. If we look back 5 years, they're actually up 33% over the 5-year average. And if we go all the way back 15 years, accidents are only up by 12%, but injury accidents are up by 25%. So the idea that less accidents have happened on Venice Boulevard is completely false. Now, if you look at LADOT's report, which I should have put in here, but I didn't, because I was planning to stay within the 15 minutes, so I apologize that I'm blathering on here, but I think this is very important. LADOT said accidents are down on Venice Boulevard. There have been less accidents post-road diet with an asterisk. And if you read the asterisk, it says if we don't count the accidents that happened at Venice and Wade, because there were a high number of left turn accidents there. So if you don't count all the accidents that have happened, there are less accidents. Just think about that for a second. If I don't count all the accidents, there have been less. Okay, well, let's count all the accidents. There have been more, 19% more. So don't come here and tell me that there's been less accidents. And by the way, I was going to say it again, more people were hurt. More people are being hurt on this road because of this road diet. Flat and plain and simple. Go back 15 years. And this just shows it graphically. This is the average accident, 25.6 per year for the previous 5 years. This is 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, and it's from June to June. May 20th, actually, I'm sorry, June is Playa del Rey. May 20th to May 20th, year over year, because May 20th is the day that they started the road diet here. And there was a high number of accidents in 2016. There's also a very rainy winter, and if you look at accidents across the city of Los Angeles, they spiked across the city that year. And this just graphically shows you the number of fatalities, severe injuries, visible injuries, complaint of pain, and this is how the CHP puts out accident data. But it just graphically shows you more accidents, more injuries than any year in the previous 5 years. I'm an engineer. I really like charts, especially ones that have a lot of color in them. Another thing Mike claims is traffic has returned to normal. And again, I credit Lisa for finding this. He said there's been no change in traffic volume. And they presented this chart of traffic counts. I wish I had their chart. Because their chart starts here, it drops down, and it comes back up. It comes up to about here. But what's really interesting is every day that they present traffic count data is one day, except for the last two. They averaged these two. And so they didn't present these two data points. They presented an average. And when you average these 2 points, traffic comes up here back to about 48,000 per day, which is about normal. But really, something very odd happened on September 25th, 2018 on this road. And I've searched the internet, I've searched Twitter, I've searched Facebook. I can't find anything that happened on that day. But for some reason, on September 25th, 2018, there were 11,004 more cars on the road than the next day, September 26th. There were more cars on the road on September 25th, 2018 than any other day they surveyed going back to 2015. Now, as an engineer, I look at this, I say, that's bad data. Something went wrong with my equipment that day. If I was running an experiment and I saw this data point, I would throw it out, and I would redo my count. But LA.dot didn't do that, because they wanted to support the narrative that there hasn't been a drop in traffic volume. And so they averaged them, and they put the point right here. But if we look at it, road diet happened in May of 2017, and you had a very, very quick, very precipitous drop in traffic volume. And I'm saying that this is the real data. I don't believe this point. And if this is the point, you've had a 15% or 13% drop in traffic volume. So remember those numbers I told you, 20% more accidents? That's happened with 13% less cars on the road. So we're having more accidents with less cars, but yet Mike Bonin calls that normal and safe. The last and the most disturbing claim that Mike made is business activity is up significantly. And they claim that there was $3 million more in economic activity than the previous year. Well, we've told you many times that 33 businesses have gone out of business in this street in those 2 years. How can you possibly lose 33 businesses yet have $3 million more in economic activity than the previous year? Well, you got to look at the data. What did they look at? They actually looked at a bunch of nonsense. They just took a bunch of numbers and threw them together and said, hey, we're going to make up some pardon my French, BS, and say that there was $3 million more in economic activity. What they did is they surveyed, they only looked at data through the end of 2018. And that's important because the end of 2017. The end of 2017. So you had 6 months of post-road diet data. Mike Bonin showed us this video at the end of 2018. So the implication that he makes is that by the end of 2018, there was $3 million of more million in economic activity. But really, it was at the end of 2017. So they looked at 2016, they looked at 2017, but they surveyed different numbers of businesses each year. So the blue lines here are the number of businesses surveyed in 2016, and the orange lines are the numbers of businesses surveyed in 2017, and this is by block of Venice Boulevard. It's not the same number of businesses, and it's probably not even the same businesses. So at that point, the statistic is completely meaningless. But it supported the narrative that the business is up significantly. It's a complete lie. It wasn't true. And you can ask Mr. Dimitrios, I mean, he told you that this has impacted his business, and you can ask the 33 people that shut down their businesses on the road what the road diet did to them. So how do you fight back? Data, data, data. Data is the most important weapon we have in this fight because it's the one thing that proves what they're telling us isn't true. Again, they're going to make emotional arguments. They're going to talk in platitudes, but we got to talk in data and numbers. We're going to talk about safety. Well, the data shows us the street's not more safe. We want to talk about it's good for businesses to put in the bike lanes. Well, we lost 33 businesses, and they're down by 20. The ones that are here are down by 25%. So that's basically what that says. And then use social media. You've heard people here talk about how we're on Facebook. You know, I encourage you all to join our Facebook group, Keep the U.S. Moving. That's how I communicate with Matthew and Sheila and many of the people here. We share data. We share strategies. You know, we started our Facebook page back in 2017 for Playa del Rey, and at the time it was called Keep VDM Open. And we quickly gathered 2,500 followers. We used targeted ad campaigns to target people who were likely affected by the changes. And what I mean by that, Facebook is crazy, and it knows more about you than you possibly think they know. So you can run a targeted ad campaign, and I did that actually for this conference. I dropped a pin in the middle of Venice Boulevard, and I said, I want to target people who have driven down this road and within 2 miles of that road, and I'm going to send them an ad. And so that's what we did to get people to come to our page back then. And then we would regularly urge these followers, once we gather this mass of people, it's like Lydia and Sheila were saying, you have to get them to do something. And so we would have them call and email Bonin, we'd have them call Garcetti, we'd have them call Janice Hahn, and we would pick a target every week and say, okay, this week we're going to target Janice Hahn. Everybody, you got to call her, and this is what you got to say to her. And don't be mean, don't be rude. My goal was to see how long I could keep these people on the phone, and I am very proud to say I had Eric Garcetti's secretary on the phone with me for 55 minutes. And I told her about my kids, and I told her about my in-laws. I told her about my drive to work. And I told her, I said, and I know Mr. Garcetti's not listening to me, Mike Bonin's not listening to me, because Bonin's out there telling me everyone loves this thing. So he's certainly not listening to me. So if you could just really implore to Mr. Garcetti that this has been so bad for me. I have a 3-year-old daughter, and I'm trying to get her to my in-laws' house in the morning, and she's in the back crying because she doesn't want to be in the car. I mean, and I just kept telling her story after story. Use the media. You know, as Mr. McMillan will tell you, I've been very fortunate to be on John and Ken and Dr. Drew and the Larry O'Connor show and Doug McIntyre. These people are very gracious and will put me on the air. And I get our story out. And that's how the people in Pasadena connected with me. And that's how we got Keep Pasadena Moving going. And they were able to kill their road diet. It's really important to get the story out there. And then partner with local businesses and associations. I mean, that's how I met Demetrios. These businesses were being impacted. In our community in Playa del Rey, the businesses formed an organization. 63 of them came together to urge Mike Bonin to undo the road diet. So we partnered with them, and they would share our message, we would share their message, and we wanted to show that it's a community. It's not just John Russo, it's not just 1 or 2 people that are upset about this, it's a community that's upset with this. And so partnering with those businesses and associations is really important because it amplifies your message. It's not just you talking now, it's this whole group of people talking. And so how effective were we? Well, we started a change.org petition, and ours was, and actually this is Selena's from Restore Venice Boulevard. It was Stop the Unsafe Streets Project on Venice Boulevard. She got 3,500 people to sign. The people in Mar Vista started a Support the Great Street one. They had 424 people sign. So by pretty large margin, people were against it. We made a YouTube video. I encourage all of you, not YouTube, excuse me, this is on our Facebook page. I encourage all you to go to Facebook. And for Facebook reasons, where our name is actually Keep PDR Moving. I can't change it to Keep LA Moving for some odd reason. But we made a video. We were very fortunate to have a lot of Hollywood people in Playa del Rey. And they came together, and Brooke here was one of them who helped write the script for this. And we made a really great video. It's 4 minutes long. 183,000 people have seen have this video pop up in their news feed, and over 70,000 of them watched it. And that number scared the crap out of Eric Garcetti. Like, we got word back from City Hall that they were very scared by this video because we made them look like morons. We really did. And John Cobell from John and Ken, we pulled some of their audio. He started off the video basically calling Mike Bonin an idiot, and it is great. And I highly recommend everyone watch it. So Mike Bonin, he ignored our complaints. I told you we were calling his office, but he would be out in print and in public at the Mar Vista Community Council meeting. He said, people come up to me, they tell me they love these road diets. That I get calls all the time, people telling me that they're fantastic. Well, we filed a Freedom of Information Act request with his office, and this is one of the sheets that was returned. It's a call log. And he gave us, this is Mr. I just want you guys to know about our councilman, Mike Bonin, Mr. Environment. All these documents are PDFs, but he didn't want to give us the PDFs because he wanted to make our life difficult. He printed out a stack of 5,000 pages. I kid you not, it was about this tall. And he said, you can come to my office and look at them. And he would not give us electronic copies. And so Selena and a couple of people from Playa del Rey went down there one day, and they sifted through those 5,000 documents, and this is one of the pages they found. And it's his call log. And you can't read these numbers in the corner, so I'm going to read them to you. Favorable coverage for the road diet, 191. Our favorable count, 191. Opposed count, 1,545. 89% of the people who contacted his office were opposed to the road diet. But he was out in public saying how much everyone loved it. And this is just how they lie to you. They lie, and they're not going to be truthful, and you just got to keep pounding on them and pounding on them and pounding on them because you're having an impact when 89% of the calls to his office are negative. So I guess we're coming to the end of the conference. I'm the last speaker, and I wanted to go last because I wanted to present this chart last. So where do we go from here? I mean, we have people who've traveled from all over the country to come here. The Millers came from New York. Matthew came from Waverly, Iowa. Frank and Susan there came all the way from Pasadena, which up to 110 isn't easy for anyone. Sheila, you're from Detroit, no, Wisconsin. Well, I knew one of the states over there somewhere. And we all came together today to have this conference to talk about these things that are impacting us and that they're affecting our community. So how do we grow this movement? How do we leave here, this room, and turn it into something bigger? How do we leverage our individual talents and resources to broaden our impact? Because as Sheila said, 83% of people in this country drive. We're the biggest voting bloc in the country, but we don't vote in our own self-interest. We voted for Mike Bonin, for God's sake. But if we said, no, I'm not going to vote for the guy that does the road diets, I'm not going to vote for the guy who makes my commute worse, I'm not going to vote for the guy who makes it harder for me to get to work, and I'm going to hold you accountable, Mr. Politician, and I will not vote for you because of this issue, I mean, any politician would fall over backwards to get 83% of the vote. Mike Bonin will claim, by the way, that he got 70% of the vote. He got 11% of the vote because it was the lowest voter turnout in LA history. 11% of eligible voters voted for Mike Bonin. And how do we all work together to grow the movement? I don't have answers to these questions. I don't know how. If I knew how, there'd be 5,000 people in this room today. But we all should think about this and think about how we can get together. And we will get to you. Because I think it's really important that where we all agree, because we all have different interests, different worries, different concerns, but there's a really large area on that Venn diagram where we all agree. And it's that area where we need to come together and really just hammer these people that are making our lives difficult. And so I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who came today. I want to say thank you to Chris because it was a Herculean effort on his part to pull this thing off. Yeah, and we will take questions. We will take questions. I want to thank all of you for coming. I was telling Chris, if we had 20 people here, I would think that we were a massive success. And I was literally falling over myself this morning, seeing the number of people who came here today. And so I really want to say thank you to all of you.
So I have a couple of questions that I want to ask, and then we'll go to the audience for the last round of questions. You presented a number of statistics and a lot of data. Okay. The other side is using emotion and demagoguery. For all the people on the panel here, how much do you think is effective by inundating them with data as opposed to also making the sort of emotional argument and that sort of thing? What do you feel the proper balance of that is? Can you argue emotion with statistics?
Well, I'll start and say I'm really the wrong person to answer this question because I'm an engineer. Right, because I'm an engineer. And to me, it's all data. It's all numbers. Everything is data and numbers. I mean, if the Wright brothers went by emotion, they'd still be sitting on those hills in Kitty Hawk. They never would have flown. So we have to make the argument with data because they're going to come at us and say, again, the emotional arguments to trigger you. If we have the ability to save a life every year, well, yeah, but we haven't lost a life on here in 10 years on this road. I mean, so you have to counter the argument with data, and you do make the emotional plea, but I think maybe the emotions come in to the impacts it's having, that you're going to run the mom and pop out. I mean, I'll give you an example of how bad it was in Playa del Rey. So in Playa del Rey, we had 63 businesses say that they were negatively impacted by the road diets. And it was everybody from the coffee shops, because people weren't stopping to get coffee anymore, to the restaurants where in the evening the people didn't want to fight the traffic to come into town. So Lisa, who ran Cannellini, said, you know, my 8:30 seating's not too bad, but my 5 and 6 o'clock regulars are gone. And a lot of those regulars never came back because they found new places to go. It even impacted the dentist. The dentist told me 2 really interesting stories because you think, why would a road diet impact the dentist? Number one, his clients couldn't get into Playa del Rey. They said, I don't want to fight the traffic to come into Playa del Rey. And the other thing, it made him late for his appointments. He said, one day I was late coming into work because of the road diet. I parked my car. I had to run the 2 blocks down Pershing, and I sent my secretary back to go get my car. And in fact, actually, my dad, who's here today, he lives in El Segundo, and he said it impacted him when he was going to his doctor's appointments in Santa Monica. Because as I showed you on that map, there's not a lot of places to get from the South Bay to the West Side. And so he was the cut-through traffic they were trying to redirect, but the poor guy's just trying to get to the doctor. So you got to make those kind of arguments along with the data. Say, so you're impacting these people, and they're also not being truthful with you because the data says this.
I've been interviewed by the New York Times a number of times, and almost inevitably when I get called killer on social media. And they're very good at using this kind of emotional thing. You know, they call the National Motors, they almost demonize us. It's really scary. But you know, where this is coming from is from Vision Zero, and this is how it is. You know, Vision Zero started in Sweden. Their goal is to make sure that there's no traffic deaths ever, which is a really great goal, and we all want that. We don't want traffic deaths. Motorists do not want to kill people unless you're a psychopath, and we are not. So that's what we have to remember. We do not want to kill people. But the other thing that they also say is that every accident, which I'm going to call an accident, is caused by a car, no matter what. And that's really hard to refute, because this is what all these people believe. No matter what, the car is responsible. And we have to keep hammering and saying, I'm sorry, everyone's responsible for road safety. You're responsible for yourself, you're responsible for others and your care, and you're also responsible for others that use the road. Also, everyone who uses the road needs to use the same rules. This is very, very important. And I was just thinking, somebody had asked a question earlier about how big tech is involved in all of this. And I was thinking that, I don't know if you realize this, but there's a consortium of companies like Lyft and Uber and I think 19 others. Their stated goal is to get us out of our personal vehicles. This is something, it is a threat, big tech is a threat, and we have to remember that they want to get us out of our personal vehicles so we can purchase their subscription services. So we're having to fight this on many fronts, and that's what makes it difficult for us, because really all we want to do is get from A to B. We want to get from A to B safely. And that's what we have to keep in mind. We have to just be consistent. And we have to remember that you're not alone.
When you want to make a difference to somebody that you're speaking to, you need to try to engage them and put them in your story. You need to engage them in a way such as, you know how hard it is when you're trying to get somewhere and you're in a hurry and you're blocked by other people. Or you have a family member who's passed away because an emergency vehicle didn't get to them in time. I believe that you have to add some emotion and some engagement in that story besides just presenting the facts. And I'm going to be honest with you, and this is going to sound very sexist, but especially if you're talking to females. Females think at a different level, and they think on a more emotional level. That's just the reality. But if you can gauge them at any level, whether it's just fact-based, I really think engaging them in your story is critical to getting them to be on the same page with you.
So there's a lot of ways that you can interact as an advocate. You can interact sort of as somebody who is opposed to something that you're giving an elected official a hard time. Or you can engage with that person, you can become friends with that person and engage with them and get them on your side that way. I'm wondering if you can briefly just talk a little bit about the differences between those and when you use one as opposed to the other, if you have any thoughts for the people in this room, as opposed to just being somebody who yells and screams at them, as opposed to having a relationship with them so they can see you as a human being.
Yes, so this is something that I teach in some of the sessions that I do, is the best thing that you can do when you decide that you're going to become active as an advocate or as an activist is to meet your officials. And there's different ways to do that. First of all, I recommend always introducing yourself with a business card. If you don't have an official title, then make a business card up that has your name and phone number. And you make sure that when you're out, and let me tell you how to do that, you sign up on their Facebook page, you sign up for their newsletter. Then when there's a picnic at the park, you get invited. Then you purposely go to them and say, hey, John, I understand that you're my council member. I've never met you before, but I want to tell you, I know that the road diets are a very big concern of yours, and you're trying to address the traffic safety. Well, I don't know that I agree with it 100%, so I'm wondering if there's somebody in your office that I could speak to about that. You don't want to scare them off. You don't want to disengage them, but you want to make sure that they're aware of why you approach them or what you may have in common with that. I absolutely agree with you on that. Or if you totally don't agree and you don't think you can behave, then the best way is to find something else you do agree about and introduce that to them. Hey, I understand that you're working on education issues. I used to be the education rep on my neighborhood council. I've worked on state legislation, and I would like to be able to connect with somebody on your staff who's into education. Even though it's totally not the subject I want to talk about, you want them to see you in a positive light. I recently did, last weekend I did a training session, and I had former Secretary of State Deborah Bowen on my panel, and I had Jill Stewart on my panel, and we talked about how how the officials will actually have codes that they use, whether it's scratching their ear, whether it's nodding their head, to get their staff to rescue them from you. It's totally true. It's just me, sorry. But the fact is that it is a tool that they use to keep who talks to them in control. I want to make sure that you're not the one who they're being rescued from. And so to do that, you just engage them in some little way. When they get used to seeing you in an event and they become comfortable with you, they're not like, oh God, here she comes again. Like, they're thinking of you as more in a positive way. So it opens the door so that when you do disagree with them on something, you have a better footing from which to create that relationship.
So let me make sure I get your question right, Jay. You said, when do you use, like, when would you be angry versus when would you be nice? That's basically the gist of your question.
To some extent, but it was a little broader than that, but that's a good question.
And I would say, much like what Lydia said, I would say that you always need to approach anybody you're talking to, or anything you're writing, or anything you put out there in the media as being a very nice and reasonable person, and as being this kind of Keep LA Moving target on my back now in the bike activist world. I'm always very cautious of giving anybody anything they can use against me. I don't want to say anything that can be taken out of context or twisted and turned around and said, like, look, I told you John Russo hates puppies. I would say you always approach everything from a very rational, reasonable, data-driven point of view, and you lead with the personal story. Let me tell you how this is affecting me. It's been really a problem for me, my family, my father, my daughter, my kid, my neighbor. And then you come back with, and then, you know, the kind of the things you use to tell us why you needed to do it, those aren't really true when I look at the data. And because you told me A, but the data tells me B. And so I think if we're going to reconfigure our roads that 50, 60, 70,000 people per day use, it really needs to be based in facts and data, because you're affecting 70,000 people per day, not this statement you made, which when I look at the data, again, isn't really true. So that's how I would approach that.
I'm going to take this in a different direction a little bit. One of the biggest problems with anti-car advocates is that they like to try to engage you on social media. So my suggestion is don't engage them, because it'll make your life a lot happier and you won't go down the rabbit hole with them. So it's really, really important to remember, because it's not worth it. They've made up their mind, and I don't think that you can convince them otherwise. What we need to do is work on the people that we can convince, those people that might be on the fence. Your general motorist that doesn't really know anything, they need to know, and you need to go and talk to your neighbors and your family and your friends and say, hey, this is becoming a problem. Why don't we get together? Why don't we figure out what we can do? Because there's so many different things you can do on a local level, and even in California, it has been somewhat successful. New York, though, I don't know. I'm going to give up on you, maybe, Zach and Arthur.
I'm just going to add one thing in from my experience, which is if you are going to engage with elected officials, an excellent time to do so is when they're running for office. Because there are two things that an elected official wants. They want to get reelected, and they want to get elected to their next office. Those are the two things. So keep that in mind. And even if it's the entire field of people, okay, because sometimes it's an open seat and there's no elected official that's running. Get to know the people that are running, get to know possibly who even has a chance of winning, and you don't have to suck up to them, but get to know them, because they're going to be much more willing to talk to you when they're running for office than after they've been elected. So I'm going to open it up now to questions. We're going to start over here, and we'll get around to everyone. I've heard we got about 10 minutes, so.
Actually, thank you very much. I'm Robert Fox again. And I am running for office right now for the 2nd District of Long Beach. You ask a question, how do we get this done? What is the things to do? Clearly, you all contacted us on email, right? I joined your Facebook page. If we look at the people from all over the nation here, let's make an agreement that we share all of our contact list with this group. If we don't do, that's expanding ourselves by 500 for me, it's like thousands. And I'll give you my contact list, because these people who are my friends obviously think the way I think. And it's across the nation. I don't have, radical socialist friends, I'm afraid. Sorry, I don't have friends that don't tell the truth. So, I think that all of us are the same that way. So please make an agreement to share your email with these people. Secondly, the question of whether it's emotional or whether it's data-driven. It's a combination of both. But here's the thing. In Long Beach, they presented the land use element. It's part of this Safe Streets initiative, part of Vision Zero. It's all in Agenda 21. I fought the city, and I was emotional. I can be an articulate speaker if I have to be, and I rose the citizens of Long Beach, and I won the land use element. 8 districts out of 9. I'm now running for the 9th district I didn't win because she couldn't tell the truth for the love of God. You guys have to stand in front of people and be emotional. These people are going to call you sons of bitches. They're going to call you greedy-ass bastards. And you're going to have the guts to go up there and tell them for what they are. If they start opposing you, then you just say, you're a minority of few people who somehow have bought into the Kool-Aid, and if you want to drink it, great, but it's not our job to make you right when you're wrong. You've got to be emotional. No, people vote on emotion, not on data. Thank you.
Did anybody want to speak on that, or we want to move to the next question?
Just doing that in person.
What was that?
Yeah, do it in person, not online, because online
Right.
is a rabbit hole.
Okay, good.
I sort of want to tag along with what Lydia said. We really are, this is not an issue of left versus right. This is more an issue of an adults versus children. This is not a renaissance of reason over faith. This is a denaissance of faith over reason. And with that in mind, again as a physician and as a dermatologist especially, I'm very quick to tell the male residents that I teach, look, guys, you're going to have to prove yourself to the women in ways women don't have to. Similarly, it goes the other way around. And much of what we see here in terms of, and I want to hear what you guys have to say to this idea, I find that when I talk about safety and security on trains and bicyclists, they're mainly, most of the advocates on that end that push the road diet and lack of safety and security are men without children. And it's the women, particularly women with children, who are most likely to tell the real world what they need to hear, because that's why people don't jump on their bikes or use mass transit enough, because women are going to be more focused on safety and security of their children. So this is, you want to talk about toxic masculinity, I would say that Mike Bonin and Eric Garcetti, that's toxic masculinity. To pretty much go pound sand. And so in many ways, I think this will have to be led by women or men who understand sort of getting past the people that ignore facts and will focus on emotions. So Lydia and the others, all 3 of you, I want to hear what you have to say, because this is not going to be something where 2 + 2 will ever equal 4. We have to make it equal 7, because that's what they believe.
Go ahead.
So anybody who knows me knows that I tend to be emotional. And as much as I try to be professional, the emotion gets in the way sometimes. I try to do my presentations based on fact, but that heart always gets in there. And that's one of the reasons that I actually am very successful when I do try to fight the battles. I do a lot of stuff behind the scenes, a lot of stuff that's not visible, but I have a really good success rate, but that's because I am emotional first, and I've had to train myself to try to check that and to stick to the facts. But the emotion, if you're an emotional person, it really always comes through.
Well, first I'm going to say I don't think I can ever say 2 + 2 is 7. I can never say 2 + 2 is 7. And I'm going back to I'm an engineer, and it's really hard for me to answer an emotional argument because emotions aren't real, I'll say, in a way. I use my Wright brothers analogy, and I'm going to use going to the moon. Emotions didn't get those guys to the moon, and emotions didn't get the guys on Apollo 13 back to the Earth. It was a bunch of engineers and really smart people that looked at facts and they looked at data and they said, look, if we screw up, those guys are going to die. And so I can't bring emotion into this room because there's lives on the line. And they got those guys on the moon and they got them back safely. So I'm always going to lead with facts and data and try and make it personal now. But you make a really great point. Emotions really do cloud people's decision making. And if I'm talking to, like, a lot of what we heard in Playa del Rey was people complaining that they didn't feel safe crossing the street. Now, in the survey that they gave those people, only about 10 people said they didn't feel safe crossing the street. But we heard many stories that I don't feel safe crossing Manchester. It's such a busy street. I'm crossing the street with my baby. I've almost got hit by the car 100 times. And I don't think I can ever win that argument. I can never convince a mom who was crossing the street with her baby, who almost got hit by a car, that what Mike Bonin and these activists are telling them is going to be safer, because there's case studies. There's case studies that say this is safer. Now, those case studies are nonsense. We know that, but they don't know that. And many people think that it's kind of an authority thing. And when they hear that there's a study by experts, and those experts said this will make them safer, and they have an emotional response to that, I'm not going to be able to win that with data and with facts. And so you kind of got to cut your losses. And you say, I'm going to go and talk to the people. I'm going to talk to everybody, and I'm going to tell my story to everybody. And I'm not going to win all those discussions. I'm not going to win every argument, because people are going to make up their minds, not always based on numbers. But I'm going to keep pushing the numbers, because I really think the majority will tag on to the numbers and not the emotion.
We handle a lot of data in our office, and but we also look at trends. And I recently wrote a newsletter about Vision Zero programs seem to be causing more traffic deaths. I don't know if you're aware of this, but in many cities across the country this summer, New York City, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon. And what's incredible about this is these cities have spent so much money on these Vision Zero programs. And I think that's one area that we haven't really talked about, is talking about how much these things cost. They cost, this is what we are paying for. We are taxpayers, we are paying for this. And that is an emotional issue. Money is always an emotional issue. So that's something that you can certainly talk about. Portland, Oregon, for example, spent $100 million on trying to eliminate traffic deaths by, I think, 2025. And this summer, they've already surpassed last year's traffic deaths by the summer. And that's happened across the country. And Vision Zero, and I'm just using this as an example because there's so many, but money is something that can always be discussed, and most people understand if it is costing us money because our taxes are going up. We can't keep affording this, and that's just happening. And where we live, our wheel taxes went up $50 again. That's really expensive. I don't know what to do. You know.
Okay, so I've been told we have a 15-minute hard out to finish up. So we want to get to as many people as possible for their questions. So we're going to go. So for questions, please keep them somewhat brief if you can, and also the answers, if you can make them a little more brief as well. I know there's a lot of people that have questions. So,
okay. Hello, folks. My name is Earl Weber, and I'm a film producer based right here in LA. I've spent the better part of a decade, or more than a decade, working on 22 different documentaries on everything from healthcare and education to environment and human rights. And this January, I came to the reality that I needed to do more than just create awareness. I needed to have a seat at the table. So I put in the works a process to begin running for Congress. So I'm running for Congress in California's 37th Congressional District against the incumbent Karen Bass. Thank you. You can find out more about my campaign at weber2020.com. I want to share a little bit about why I'm here. You see, I met this amazing fellow here about 2 weeks ago, and he was opening my eyes to some of the problems that many of you have been encouraged to come here and discuss, which is these terrible road diets that are hurting industries and hurting businesses and, causing death and making it unsafe, especially for people who can't even speak for themselves, like firefighters and police unions. So, as a person who hates these road diets, I'm here to be that voice for those people who because of all the bureaucracy, can't speak for themselves. Back in 2015, I spent all my time driving up and down all these freeways, and while I'm sitting in traffic, I'm just observing how traffic breathes. And I started thinking, oh, there has to be a way to fix this traffic problem. And I believe I do have a solution. And at some point in a future event, I'll be discussing it with you guys. But you can, again, you can find me at Weber2020.com or on Facebook at Earl Weber for Congress.
Thank you, Earl. Okay, I'm going to go to the sponsor of the event. So, Gary?
Hi, I'm Gary Biller with the National Motorists Association. I don't know if I'm the sponsor. I think we're a sponsor. I want to add, and this won't be a question for the group unless you want to respond, but it's more of adding to something Sheila mentioned earlier, and to show that there is a national aspect to this. I know it's been touched upon, and rightfully so. There's been a lot of talk about Los Angeles in particular, but there's a piece of legislation in the U.S. Congress, in the U.S. House of Representatives, Bill number 3663, called 2019 Complete Streets Act. It has a couple of mandates. It's been assigned to a committee in the House. And by the way, to show that this is not a politically ideological issue, there are either 10 or 12 sponsors are evenly split between Democrats and Republicans. So there's an infatuation to move forward with complete streets. It's sitting in committee. This is kind of a dangerous time because it's been kind of dormant for a while, so you never know if it's just going to pop up. But what I want to say is the two mandates. One is that if it passes, every state will be required to have a complete streets program, fund a complete streets program. The second aspect is it flips the mode of transportation use on its ear by saying any new road construction or any road expansion improvement must, from a design standpoint, the priority of design should be pedestrians first, bicyclists second, public transit third, vehicular motorist fourth, and then freight, which is not minimal either, is fifth. So if we want to see more of, well, I don't know if there's anything like what we're seeing out here in Venice Boulevard, but if we want to see more road diets across the country, or if we don't want to see, we need to get very active in this. And so I'm going to make you an offer, and I think Robert stepped out, but to echo what he was saying earlier, drop us a line at nma@motorist.org. We'll add you to a watch list. You won't get any more offers from us, but we're going to be alerting our members on any activity on this national bill. And we need to contact the members of the committee in the House and your own U.S. representatives to defeat this piece of legislation unless we want to see road diets spread across the country. And I'll put one more requirement on you, and that is when you get an alert from us, pass it along to 10 more people and encourage them to do the same thing, to contact the representatives, contact the people on this committee. And we need to defeat this movement towards complete streets across the country. Thank you.
And you can also join the National Motorists Association as a joined member. So please consider doing that because it's very, very important.
Salvatore Grammatico. I live in this area. Graduated from Venice High School down the street in '71. I'm not going to take that much time, but I think what we need to do is I want to get on a list. I left my email address with Sheila, and something has to come out of this. The fire is burning. This is a constitutional issue more than anything else. And I've fought many different fights, and every rights that we have are being taken away. And it is an issue, and the issue is Agenda 21 and 30. If you don't know anything about it, I think we should create a website. I will be more than happy to participate on that, to give feedback, and go from there, because I don't want to hog up on the time, but I got a lot to say, but I'm not going to say it in the last couple of minutes that we have left. I'm glad that it's happening, and I know we have to fight, period, end of story. Forget about the emotions and everything else. The people that are being killed in this accident, it is just an excuse to justify what they want. Okay, if they really cared about the people being killed have more police enforcement on the speeding, and also fix the road, which they are not doing, and even our gas tax money have gone up. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 7 minutes. Okay, so we're also going to go to another very important person here today.
Yeah.
John, I just wanted to ask you to speak to what we did in our community to bring everybody in to everybody has different talents. Some people are based on data, some people are based on emotions, but I think that in Playa del Rey we did a good job of bringing everybody in and allowing them to, everybody wanted to do something, and enabling them to do that or giving them the confidence to go use their talents really worked well for us. And if you want to expand on that more.
No, that's a really good point. And one thing that Carla was great at when she started this organization, I call myself co-founder, but Carla was really the founder. And she wound up dropping out of all this because it just became too much, too big. She's still what's the word I'm searching for here? She consults with me. I ask her a lot of questions, and we still talk a lot. But Carla was great. She would go to a meeting, and I highly recommend that you do this, because going to meetings matters, because not only to get your point across, but also to find out the other people that share your opinion. And Carla would listen to what everyone said, and then at the end of the meeting, she'd stand outside and say, I heard you speak. I would love to have you on our team. What do you do? And people say, well, I say, I'm an engineer. She's like, okay, great. You should look at data. You should really go track down the data. They're telling us a lot of things. Is this true? Someone else say, well, like Brooke said, I'm a producer. So, okay, great. Can you help us write scripts? So we need to get some talking points down that we're just going to hammer those talking points and get our points down. So she gave Brooke that job. And one thing that we did really well, and Lisa alluded to this, is that we let everybody do what they did well. We didn't micromanage anybody. That video that I talked about, this guy named Vance, he was a videographer. He just went out and started videotaping one day. He said, you know what? The traffic sucks. They're saying it's not bad. I'm going to go out there with my video camera. I'm just going to start taping it. And he started taping it, and then he started editing it together, and he started putting little clips together. And the reason and then Vance knew a producer and got with Brooke, who did the help write the copy. And we produced this great video. And no one said, hey, okay, we didn't have a meeting and say, we're going to make a video. What should it say? These guys just went off and did it because that's what they did well. And I think that's really important, because people want to do something. And if you wind up not letting them do things, you say, okay, well, that's a really good point. We're going to take it under advisement at our next meeting in 3 weeks. That person's going to get demotivated and go away, and you're never going to see them again. And so letting people do what they do well, let them express themselves, and you kind of set up the boundaries of what are our points, what's our data, what are our talking points. You set those bounds, and you just let people go. And you continue to grow the movement and get more people doing more things. And that's what politicians don't want to see. I've learned that there's 2 things politicians hate more than anything. They hate somebody who's active, and they hate somebody who knows the facts. And if you're active and you know the facts, that's how you're going to win this fight. And that's how you're going to get them
on their hands. They hate people that have time on their hands as well, because they expect you to get tired and give up. That's the other part of it. So we have 5 minutes left. Actually, 4. 4 minutes.
Okay, I can do this. My name's Lee Allen. I'm with Keep Pasadena Moving. I'm with Kevin and Sue and Frank today, and I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction. I am a docent. I belong to the 2nd largest preservation organization in California. And what has become obvious to me is that the concepts and all the issues we're talking about here today in terms of transportation and commuting and all of that is washing over into other aspects of our community. For example, this preservation society that I belong to, that I'm very ardent about being a docent with, they are now mentioning complete streets as part of their walking program, of which I conduct. And so my question to the committee, to anybody here, is I really feel strongly, I don't think it's appropriate that in a preservation society where they are talking mostly about protection, advocacy, and education, nothing to do with commuting and with transportation. And where did complete streets crop up in their newsletter? I want to find out. I want to approach the board tactfully and respectfully. I know a few board members, and I'm beginning to get ideas about how I can approach the board, because I just don't think it's appropriate in this type of organization to be talking about and naming specifically complete streets. Does anybody have any ideas what I could do?
You know, AARP
I have 2 minutes
is also,
to answer that.
AARP is also very big on complete streets and Vision Zero. So it's very interesting how they're permeating every other association too, and that's their plan. It's a very good question. I'm not sure the answer yet, but if you give me your information, I'll try to think of some ideas on that one. Okay.
Oh, hello. Hi, I'm Michelle Krupkin. I'm a member of the Mar Vista Community Council. I'm not here on that behalf. I founded the Great Streets Ad Hoc Committee and was sold a bill of goods by Councilmember Bonin, and I'm still here trying to reverse this. But my question is, and I would have loved to speak today, but I guess I missed the boat. So I'm just having a quick question about community plans. I just wanted to add to her community plan. Right now, community plans for Los Angeles are being redone at a lightning speed. The usual time constraint is 10 years, and they're trying to push it through in like 3 to 5, more likely 3. Transportation is an important component of these community plans, but they're trying to minimize that. And we need to speak to all of our communities here in LA and nationally when these community plans are being redone, because this not paying attention is the result. There's something in Los Angeles called Livable Boulevards, the West Side TIMP, Transportation and Infrastructure Mitigation Plan. They're taking money from that and creating road diets. There's one that's going to start soon on Centinela. If you look in Livable Boulevards, there's 5 streets that are mentioned: Venice, Centinela, Motor, Overland, and Pico. Pico in between the 405 and the West Side Pavilion, where they're building the Google headquarters. Another new Google headquarters. You know, LA DOT won't come to my ad hoc meetings anymore and speak because they say they don't feel comfortable. Well, my job is not to make city agencies personnel comfortable. My job is to advocate for stakeholders. That's why I was reelected 3 times. So my question is, what kind of survey would you put together to reach out? Right now, Delray Neighborhood Council is doing a survey, and they're trying to do outreach. I'm trying to kind of watch them and make sure they actually do outreach. Because on this boulevard, just so you know, the number of surveys totaled less than 300. Over 100 of them were kids from Venice High School who don't even drive. That's who filled out the survey to say how great this was.
I actually have an answer to that question, and this is actually a neighborhood council answer. It would be my suggestion to go to LANC, which is the alliance of all 96 neighborhood councils in the city, and speak to them about this. Ask if this can be put on the agenda as a conversation, because I think that it's what's happening is we're finding as the city is moving forward in all the affordable housing and things like that, suddenly they're moving CEQA out of the way. CEQA doesn't matter anymore. We're just going to pretend CEQA doesn't exist. We're going to pretend that the neighborhood councils aren't there to weigh in. They're changing the codes. Jill could remind me, I think it's AB 330 that we have pending up in Sacramento, where they're saying that there's only going to be 5 opportunities for people to weigh in, and that cuts neighbor councils who are part of that process out completely. SB 330. So the thing is this is a part of the process to shut us down and shut down the voice of the neighborhoods. But we have to stick together, and LANC is one of the alliances that can help us do that on that issue.
And also throw in a plug for groups like Keep LA Moving to be involved in those kinds of issues and those surveys. And I can't help you write that survey off the top of my head, but I want to point you to Frank and Susan and the other folks from Keep Pasadena Moving here, because they're doing exactly that right now. They've put together a traffic survey that they're sending out to all of Pasadena to then they'll forward to the city council to help inform the council of what the people of Pasadena want to see. And that Centinela plan is the little bit that I know about it looks like a total mess, because we have a 35,000 car per day road in 2 lanes right now, which is an overcapacity road per the definition set forth by the National Highway Transportation Agency standards. And so if they were to road diet that road, it would be a complete mess. I mean, all of us who drive it know it's a mess at rush hour as it is. So I definitely would. I think organizations like Keep LA Moving can help reach out to the neighborhood and let the people know, based on the lessons learned in Venice, what's coming down the pipe. And I think that when we talk about how we coordinate and how we all help, I mean, that's something that I try and do. I get emails probably once a week, twice a week from people all over the country that are saying, hey, they're going to road dye my town. What can I do to stop it? And I've gotten a bit of a canned response now, but we call it toolkit. And I say, a lot of what I said here, you got to get together with people on Facebook. You got to look at the data. You got to see what they're saying is true. You got to find like-minded individuals. And I hope to I hope that I can help set up groups like what we have here all across the country. And we've got, like I said, Keep Pasadena Moving, Keep Waverly Moving. We have a Keep Oakland Moving group. There's groups Save 35th Ave in Seattle. There's Queen Streets for All in New York that we talked about. So these groups are popping up, and I think that they're going to be an integral part of, I don't want to say shutting down these plans. Like, we don't want to shut down what's going on in Centinela. We just want to make sure it's based on sound engineering principles, and it's something that will actually enhance the neighborhood, not be a detriment to it, as this road diet right here was.
I was just going to say this is also happening nationally. In New York City, the city council and mayor no longer listening to neighborhood groups at all. They're just doing whatever they want. The mayor of Washington, D.C. recently decided to do something totally different that the city council voted on, which is to move the enforcement of automatic traffic enforcement to the DOT instead of the police, which might be illegal because a lawsuit in New Orleans just recently was passed from 2008, and they have to pay all the money back because the same thing happened there. So, there's a lot of shenanigans, we call them shenanigans, going on, and we need to stop it. We need to stand up, we need to get people riled up and say, this is not cool, this is what the mayor's doing is not cool, what they're doing to neighborhood groups, or ramming through these plans, it's not cool. We need more time, and we need to be a part of it, and that's really, really important.
All right. Well, I had a moving, eloquent, and inspirational closing commentary. We're running over, and it's much more important for you to have heard from our panelists. So I'm going to kibosh my own tendency to blather. I just want to say, again, thank you to our sponsors, National Motorist Association. Thank you to Reason. Thank you to the folks who traveled, Neighborhood Home, Matthew Schneider from Waverly, the amazing staff here at the Mar Vista. Sign up on our email list and give us money because, as I say, this is what we've been able to do with virtually no money. Imagine what this collection of people can do if we have a few bucks. It gives me shivers. So anyway, again, you guys are absolutely the hardcore. Thank you for taking a Saturday out to be here. Thank you for everybody's input and comment. I think virtually everybody in the room has talked. I'm going to shut up. I'm Chris LeGras. I'm out.